The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. Chapter 17. The Price of Fame. For the second consecutive night, Gold dreamed about a parallel life, completely different than his own. This time, he was still on Route 34, but it was like he was watching a movie of himself, rather than seeing events through his own eyes. The parallel Gold stood in front of the door to a small cottage, and he rapped on the door with his knuckles, grinning ear to ear. After a few seconds, the door opened, and an old man gazed out at him through wire-rimmed spectacles. He appeared to recognize his visitor, and returned the smile. "Ah, it's you! Your Odysee and Heracross are doing fine. They've grown in level." With a wave of his arm, he invited Gold inside. "Have you come to daycare to pick them up?" "Yeah. In fact, I was hoping to make a quick switch." Parallel Gold took out 2 Pokeballs, and they flashed open in his hands. An Eevee and a Ditto materialized on the tiled floor, and the old man's eyes raised. "Ah, I see," he said, shooting a knowing smile to the old woman sitting at the table beside him. "You want an Eevee egg, is that it? Well, it may take a while, but it can be done." He gave Gold an inquisitive look. "If I may ask, what made you decide to switch now?" "3 reasons, really," replied Parallel Gold, pulling money out of his pocket to count. "First, why raise just Espeon or Umbreon when you can have them both? Second," he handed the cash to the daycare man, and from his other pocket produced a spiked orange geode. The old woman at the table clapped her hands with impressed delight. "Oh, a sunstone!" she said, identifying the gem. "That's right," said Gold proudly. "I won it at the bug-catching contest, and it'll jump Oddish from Gloom directly into a Bellossom. The team could use a good grass type." He raised 3 fingers, and his face grew serious. "You said an Eevee egg would take a while? Trust me, I'll need the time. Raikou is my 3rd reason." "Raikou?" replied the old woman, raising a hand to her ear as if making sure she had heard properly. "The Legend of Thunder?" "It's not just a legend," said Parallel Gold excitedly, pulling 2 Pokeballs from his backpack. "I've seen him! And with these fastballs Kurt made, I'm going to catch him next time!" Gold rose out of his dream hazily, his first emotions a blur of confusion and a sense of loss. It was still dark, and as it turned out, Marina and Jinichi would not wake for another 20-odd minutes. In the meantime, he lay awake, gazing up at the stars, but not seeing them. His mind lingered on that alternative reality, in which he had been so confident in his purpose. "I was a Pokemon trainer," he thought. "One who was succeeding at everything I put my hand to. I built a Pokemon team, won special items, lifted my sights to ever higher ambitions." There was a strange ache in his chest and hands, which became more prominent as he thought about what might have been. Up until now, the only desire Gold had ever felt to own Pokemon had come from his father, and that only mildly. But now, he bitterly regretted losing Cyndaquil, and he thought about all the various missed opportunities he'd had to capture others along the way. Ursaring, back on his first night outdoor with the 3 campers. Marie from the Union Cave incident, or better yet, that powerful Steelix. Any of the Slowpoke that had come to him in Azalea Town. And Suicune. After 2 sightings, how could he have let that marvelous beast slip through his fingers? Perhaps, if he borrowed one of Marina's Pokeballs while she slept, he could capture a nearby sleeping Pokemon without struggle, and then... Self-awareness struck him at once, and the shock of it plunged his body into a cold sweat. "What am I thinking?" Why had he just contemplated stealing from his unguarded friend? How could he entertain the idea of nabbing Suicune when he knew that it was a servant of spirit? Where had these audacious thoughts come from? He did not know how long he sat upright, wrestling with his thoughts in subconscious meditation. All he knew was that when someone's voice broke him out of his trance, it was lighter out. "Gold?" He blinked and looked up. Marina was watching him, still partway enfolded in her sleeping bag, but propping herself up on both arms. She looked concerned. "You had a scary look on your face," she observed with a perturbed smile. "Are you nervous about Goldenrod City?" Gold let his face relax. He hadn't realized he was tensing up. Yeah. He sighed. It wasn't untrue, but if Marina had guessed his real thoughts, he knew he wouldn't be able to face her. The sun was almost fully up by the time Gold, Jinichi, and Marina reached the heart of Goldenrod. Once more, the sky was partially obscured, this time not by the ilex tree line, but the surrounding city's skyscrapers. Even though Ekritik was also considered a city, Gold had never seen such a metropolis as this. There was a great din of noise, smells, traffic, people densely packed on the sidewalks, an utter sensory overload. At first, Gold had taken the barrage of sights and sounds in stride, but it had only become more intense the further in they pressed. He gritted his teeth and thought of Jinichi, who walked between him and Marina like a criminal being escorted. Still wearing his rocket uniform, he looked the part and kept his gaze fixed on the sidewalk to avoid the many looks his getup drew. However agitated Gold felt in this setting, he knew it must be nothing compared to Jinichi's humiliation. This was one step removed from being carted through the street for a crime while the mob threw tomatoes. "We're with you, Junie," Marina whispered, giving his arm a squeeze. "Just keep moving," she reassured, "and we'll make it." Jinichi nodded, and under the lines of stress on his face, Gold saw a flash of gratitude. Having his friends with him made the trial bearable, and it probably deterred those who hated Team Rocket from taking potshots at him. Alone, he likely would have been 10 times worse off. "How much longer to this underground place?" Gold panted as they crossed the next intersection. "I've never been here. Is there a sign for it anywhere?" "There's the radio tower," said Jinichi, pointing a shaky finger at a tall, gray building to their left. "The entrance is supposed to be somewhere behind that spot." "We're almost there then," said Marina, in a voice that seemed to be going for cheerful, but unable to quite muster it. She gave Gold a worried look. "How are you holding up? Your face looks a little pale." "I'm okay," Gold mumbled, feeling a trickle of sweat down his right cheek. Marina regarded him doubtfully for a few seconds. "It's just all these people." She blinked. "So you're claustrophobic?" Her question was cut off suddenly by the loud blaring of bells. A little further ahead, 2 guardrails dropped slowly across the road, and traffic halted. In the distance, a train horn wailed. "It's the bullet train to Kanto," murmured Jinichi. "I guess we'll have to wait for it to pass." This, Gold noticed, changed the dynamic of their surroundings. As long as they had maintained a brisk walking pace, anyone who passed and looked at them strangely could do nothing further. In a few seconds, they would be separated once more by the sea of people, once more concealed in the ever-changing crowd. Now, however, there was no escape from gawkers. As the seconds passed, the number of people waiting for the train began to build, and even more of them took note of Jinichi's rocket uniform. Gold could hear the troubled whisperings from all around, and from the snatches of conversation, he could only imagine how mortified Jinichi must have felt. Look at that. Bold as brass, just showing off his nasty gang in front of everyone. The fool's just asking to get jumped. Or shot. How can those kids stand being so close to him? Are they rockets too? Hold on. That boy with the stick. I think I saw him on an internet video. Isn't that Gold? Hearing his name, so suddenly used, brought on an unwelcome rush of adrenaline and heart palpitations. Gold managed to avoid looking in the direction of the whispers, but he felt his body tense like a spring. How many people were recording me back in Azalea Town? He wondered, trying to remember the crowd that had gathered with the tailless slowpokes. What did they hear me say? His fingers tightened on his walking stick. How many are recording me right now? Why didn't I think about the consequences of this sooner? That's the guy who made all those slowpoke tails reappear. Shh, that video's fake. You can't believe everything you see on the internet. Yeah, well, look at him. That's definitely the same guy. Okay, so why don't you go up and ask him about it? I'm not going near that rocket grunt. What is he doing standing next to a Team Rocket member? Their voices were drowned out as the bullet train whistled past, sending off a blast of wind. Gold leaned in close to Jinichi and Marina. I can't go with you the rest of the way, he whispered urgently. You hear what they're saying, don't you? He had expected both of them, or at least Marina, to protest about sticking together. Instead, she simply nodded. Maybe it's better that you draw the crowd. We don't need any more people tracking us than we already have. Strategically, it made sense. Earlier that morning, Gold had laid hands on all the injured Pokémon his companions owned, restoring them to peak physical form. If they got in trouble underground, they could now hold their own, and Gold would only be a liability. So where should we reunite? Asked Jinichi as the train passed off, leaving the view of the other side of the tracks clear again. An enormous building across the street caught Gold's eye, one with a red dome roof and a white wall, styled after a Pokeball's design. Over the glass double doors hovered 3 large letters, colored bright yellow. Gym. Goldenrod Gym, said Gold, jerking his head at it. That should work. Marina glanced around quickly. With the railroad guard arms now lifted, the crowd's movement had slowly resumed. Nevertheless, there were now many listening ears. They had likely said too much already. Yet still, Marina gave Gold a look as if to say, Are you sure? He couldn't blame her. His track record with gyms was a contentious one, to say the least. He nodded, and without another word, the trio parted. Gold crossed the street, still hearing much of the gossip that trailed behind him, and feeling the stares that he refused to meet. By the time he reached the doors of the gym, only 2 minutes had elapsed. They were the longest of his life.